Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to. Lots to talk about. Infrastructure Week. Yes, it is Infrastructure Week. I remember there was a 4-year span where we had Infrastructure Week like every week. There were tons of displays, tons of stuff going on, lots of photo ops. Trump with the little hat and the shovel, driving a truck, playing with levers. Lots of PR stunts. Lots of stuff going on to make you think, hey, they're doing something. They're rebuilding America, and yet not a thing got done. Lots of rhetoric, lots of talk, lots of tweeting, not much action. And I look at the fact that it's been 18 months since the president signed the infrastructure bill into law, and over those 18 months, they've announced somewhere around $200 billion in funding for what they're saying are 32,000 projects across the country in all states, not politically motivated, not, no, you didn't vote for us, nothing for you. No, actually looking at getting stuff done. And now here's the thing. What I love about what the administration is doing, 83% of us, 83% of registered voters, both sides of the aisle, no aisle, think we should be making the stuff here. Like here, like made in America. If you're going to use steel in the bridge that we're going to drive over, maybe here. Just a thought. Because you want that reverberation effect. You want those jobs that will come out of this spending to be, here. Because we've got some job issues, especially the kind that pay a decent living wage, like a lot of my building trades, construction folks, the wages that they earn. Again, I said this January of 2017. Had Trump come out and said, we're going to have massive investment in infrastructure, because you remember, he was talking about $2 trillion at the time. He was talking a huge, massive amount of money. Back then, I said, if he does this, if he goes and he does infrastructure in a big way, I'm a big supporter, big fan, think we should be doing it. He would have gotten elected without question, in my view. But they didn't. They chose the political, they chose the show, they chose the flash without actually doing the work. And this is where I give Biden credit. They talked about it, they got something passed, and they're doing it. Not a lot of fanfare. In fact, I haven't seen my idea anywhere, which is giant 20-foot Joe Biden signs with, hey, I did this. I haven't seen that. I'm hoping they come around to it, because I think we need to do some of that stuff. But this administration is just about getting the stuff done. And what they're doing it with, in creating jobs that can't easily be outsourced and are probably going to be around for a while. I don't know that robotics and AI are going to be able to take those just yet. And sadly, we're heading towards an era, and this is where I'm really concerned, because, I've had some of these conversations recently about jobs in the future. And what's interesting to me is, while Democrats and Republicans have finally gotten their heads out of where on bad trade deals, and again, I give Trump credit. He had his thumb on the pulse. Our trade deals, something I've been screaming about for decades. He didn't actually do anything about it. Look, I'm okay. I liked what they got accomplished in the USMCA. I think that was good. It was a step in the right direction. I like the fact that there were some tariffs on China, not much else. But finally, everyone's kind of coming around. I think the pandemic had a little bit to do with it as well. You need local manufacturing. You need local supply chains. Now, my problem with this is it's coming at a time when robotics and AI seem to be coming more and more online. So the money that we're going to spend reshoring manufacturing could come at a, really no job increase kind of format. And this is where, my mind goes into this weird spot, because I had a conversation with a couple of my union buddies, and it's a conversation that, I have this a lot, but this time somehow it stuck with me, because one of the guys, said, in 5 years, I don't care what happens, because he thinks he's going to be okay. He thinks his pension is going to be there because he's got a good union pension. He saved a good bit of money. He's going to have Social Security. All of the three-legged stool is strong for him, he thinks. And, I said, look, the sad reality is you've done all the right things and you're probably going to be okay. But there's crisis coming. There's a tsunami of job loss on its way that no one is prepared for. I mean, policy-wise, we've done nothing. When the bad trade deals were being done, and they knew they were going to be bad for the working class. They knew there were going to be, millions of jobs lost. They knew it was going to be bad, which is why they put trade adjustment assistance in. Why they had a policy to say, okay, if you're one of the losers in this policy, we're going to throw you a little bone. Going to give you a little help, a couple of years of unemployment benefits, some education money so you can go get retrained to do some other, much worse paying job. But it was there. At least, there was something. Understand, we don't have trade adjustment assistance anymore on the books. Republicans block that. It is done. There's nothing. You lose your job because of a bad trade deal. Sorry, out of luck, brother. And I've been saying there's got to be something modeled like that, like a technology adjustment assistance. I've been calling for a technology tax for years now. It's something that is getting no attention because we're too busy fighting. We're too busy in the pie fight. We're too busy about who's going to what bathroom or who's wearing a dress, or we're too busy over a book in a library that nobody knew was there until someone got crazy. Look at this outrage. We're fed daily doses of outrage candy to keep us, not thinking about what's really going on. And what's going on is we got problems in the future. So as I was having this conversation, I was saying, look, much like the person I stood and talked to on election night in 2016, who was a very conservative pollster and political operative, said it's going to be interesting watching liberals become states' rights people. We're in this moment of watching, conservatives, I think at some point coming, especially working class conservatives, coming around to the idea that there's got to be some kind of social safety net again. That there's got to be some way, if all the jobs are going to be done with artificial intelligence or robotics or automation or in these ways, there's got to be some way that people are going to be able to eat. And a way of people, when they lose their jobs, finding the next gig. There's none of that yet. And as I was explaining this to my friend who said in 5 years doesn't care about anything, I said, well, what about your kids? What are they going to inherit? What kind of an economy, what kind of job future? I go, when our parents, sent us out in the world, they kind of had a sense of what life could be like for us. When their parents sent them out into the world, it was kind of the same thing. Had a sense. You work hard, you play by the rules, you get ahead. We're now in this weird kind of space where I don't think anybody really has a grasp of what 20 years is going to get. And if the way I'm looking at things, if these reports that I'm reading are accurate, and that half of the jobs we currently do will be gone in 15 years now, what are all these people going to do? And what are industries going to do? Like my union buddy who is in the trucking industry, when all of the trucks are going to be automated, so no need for drivers, and the dock work can be done by robots. There's no one paying into pension plans, so you're one of your legs of the stool gone bye-bye, because the pension's set up on we need young workers to take those jobs and have their career and pay into a pension fund. That's how it works. Same thing with Social Security. In a couple of years, like 7-8 years, if we continue to do nothing, which is what Congress is really good at, they're talking about a 20 to 23% cut in Social Security across the board. So nobody's focusing on that because we can't fix it. Again, we're stuck on who's going to what bathroom or who's wearing a dress or who's doing all this other stuff without talking about what's the future going to look like. Now, my buddies, good friends of mine, ranged from calling me a socialist, then a fascist, and then a communist ultimately in the span of about 20 minutes. Simply because I believe that we need smart policy to distribute the wealth of this country more equitably. And you know me, I'm a union guy, so first it's through work, through the wages that we earn, through strong unions, fighting for better wages, hours, conditions, distributing wealth, kind of the way it was for our grandparents' generation when they were in the heart of their work lives. And then, honestly, by any means necessary, I'm not terribly on the side of universal basic income, but I'm not against it. I'm not against the idea of redistributive policies, whatever they may be at some point. But we're not talking about any of this on the policy level. Now, what's interesting to me is I was watching a clip of Warren Buffett. And Warren Buffett was asked, who's winning in this economy? And now I could easily answer that. He is. And that's what he said. He goes, the rich, people like me. He said, we've gone from, and I've cited this before, and this is Warren Buffett saying it. We've gone from 93 billion in wealth to the top 400 on the Forbes 400 in 1982 to $2.4 trillion today. He said, look, as the economy becomes more specialized, he points out that we used to be an agrarian economy. A couple hundred years ago, he said it was very hard to get 20 times the wealth of the next guy because you were a little bit better of a farmer. He says, but, if you're better at some skills, people can become incredibly wealthy today at a young age. And it's not because you earned the money. It's not because you built a steel mill and then earned money to build another one and you built something. He says, today you can capitalize an idea that makes people incredible amounts of money. Now, that's good for a handful of people with good ideas, and we need those. We need entrepreneurs, and we need people who have ideas. For them, going to be great. But for the working class, for the people who get up every day and punch a clock or their idea doesn't catch on, what is that going to mean? What is that going to mean for average, everyday working people? And what it means is a Dickinsonian kind of world of a handful of ultra extraordinarily wealthy people and then a bunch of people in poverty. Now, I came across this infograph that was just fantastic. It's done with World Inequality Database information that points out that, countries treat their wealthy and their poor, very differently. And, they point out that being poor in a place like Slovakia is almost like being poor here in the U.S., except the country more than twice as wealthy. And they point out that, while the median income of the median income is about 75,000, the income for the poorest 20% is down near the Saudi Arabia area, under 15 grand, like 13 something. And they point out, this graph points out that in Norway, income wise, we're about the same. In Norway, the wealth of the folks there at the bottom 20%, more than double. Over 35 grand, like 37 grand. And you go, how's that? How's that possible? Policy. It comes back down to policy. As I say all the time, I believe in sound spending, smart policy. We use our tax dollars judiciously to do the things that we need and we use policy to make people's lives better. So I'm curious, your thoughts. Are we heading in the right direction? Are you concerned about the future? Are you concerned about the AI tsunami, or what are they calling this? The fourth technological revolution. I'm curious. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Or is this much ado about nothing? And because hey, we've lived through tough times before. We've lived through transitions, and we've come out better and richer on the other side. Except if you're in the bottom, I don't know, 90% of the economy. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. You miss any portion of the program, get the podcast. Wherever you find your favorite podcasts, you will find ours. Back after this.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Bill writes me, the AI revolution is overblown. It's not going to be as bad as you're making it out to be. There are millions of jobs that can never be done. The building trades are the area that will be least affected. I got to tell you, Bill, I don't know. I was at the convention, the AFL-CIO's convention last year, and each of the trades had their display. I went and I saw the bricklayers had this robotic hand that would pick up bricks, double the size bricks and just move them wherever you wanted them. So no longer do you have to be a big hulking guy to be able to move these bricks around. You got a machine that'll help. It's called the Mule. You look at the smart unions, the sheet metal workers. They've got all of these cool toys. I mean, really, at this moment, helpful technology that in years past you needed to do. You needed to do a lot to be able to do the job. Now, I put on the virtual reality goggles, and all you saw were all the ductwork in a building wherever the plans were. It was quite remarkable. They got a dog that runs around and measures stuff. They got all kinds of stuff. And they said that what is coming is unimaginable and will eventually replace people. So I'm a little concerned about it. Let's go to the phones. Got Frank in Illinois on line one. Frank, how are we doing today?
Doing well, Rick. Thanks for taking my call. Fascinating subject. I think about the entrepreneurs. When I was in college, I think they called them idea champions. I used to work for the Bell and Howell Company. They used to be a Fortune 500 company. Then they went private. I'm sure you've heard that before. But anyway, back to the idea. I am working on an invention at this time. I just wanted to know your thoughts on any kind of government help for idea champions. In other words, in the form of either a tax break or a tax credit. Let's say, there have to be guidelines and rules. For example, if they went to their patent attorney and they would have to show receipts to the government that, oh yes, I'm here are the bills for my patent attorney. Just wondering your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I don't off the top of my head. I don't know of any, but I will ask a couple of people that I think might know, or at least they should know. But it's an interesting thought because at the end of the day, my concern is the employment that we're used to, that my generation grew up believing was going to be around. I fear is not, and we're going to all have to potentially be our own business commodity at some point. So I'm interested to see what comes out of that as well. Appreciate the call, Frank.
Right. Thanks, Rick. Bye.
No, I mean, I don't, like I said, I don't know what the future is going to bring us. I look at the technology and I'm like, there's scary stuff. For instance, they've been talking about, the deep fakes are going to be really, the technology has gotten so incredibly, advanced that the so-called deep fakes, that's down the road. Oh no, I don't know if you've been paying attention. There's been a lot of stuff that's been popping up that has just been there. That you go, how is that? How is that? How did they do that? It's amazing to me. But it's not years away. It's now. And that's the thing. Like I try and tell my kids, what are they going to do in the coming months, in years? What's their future going to look? I don't know. I'm trying to advise them in the best way I can to help the best I can. But it is what it is. It's one of those things that policymakers have done a really crummy job. Honestly, I mean, they've done a really crummy job at preparing us for what's coming. And that's the frightening part in all of this. And why I think at some point we better figure it out. Let's quick go to the phones. Got Pete on line 2. Pete, how we doing?
All right, sir. It's totally off topic. I was just wondering if you saw last night. I saw a commercial on TV last night for Bud Light, and they had the Zac Brown band playing in the background. And I know all the controversy that's been around Bud Light and the stupidity that surrounds it. And I was just wondering if you could find somebody to figure out if that's a new commercial or if he was under contract prior to that. Because I thought if he stepped out and he, really received well with the country crowd, I was just wondering how that's playing with them, whether it was a backlash on his part, saying you're stupid, there's other things to worry about, or whether that was contracted prior to all this going down.
I'll have to look into it. I haven't seen the ad, but I will look for it.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it, Peter. But here's the thing. I mean, I said from the beginning, what a stupid controversy. And one, why would Bud Light throw themselves into it? I don't get why corporate America feels they need to try and pick sides. Do your business. But in this vein, such a stupid controversy. Who cares? And here's the thing. I didn't drink Bud Light, and I guess this is what they were thinking. I did not drink Bud Light ever. I don't think a Bud Light has ever touched my lips until Sunday when my wife and I went out to dinner. And that was me going, I'm going to have a beer. I'm going to have a Bud Light just because of this. Just because how stupid this is. And it wasn't great. I won't have another one, but it is what it is. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, Jessica Goodhart's going to be here from Capitol in Maine. Back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1919. That was the day the Winnipeg Trades and Labor Council called a general strike. It is considered one of the most important strikes in Canadian history. Social tensions intensified as soldiers returned home in search of work, only to find skyrocketing unemployment and inflation. In Winnipeg, building trades and metal workers attempted to organize and bargain as an umbrella organization. They walked off the job at the beginning of May, appealing to the city's unions for support. And on this day in 1919, some 30,000 workers walked off the job, starting with women telephone operators. The general strike had begun. Union and non-union workers alike heeded the call. Factories shut down. Public services came to a halt, including transit, mail services, and utilities. Having lost most of their workers to the strike, newspapers quickly branded strikers as Bolsheviks, depicting them as bomb throwers in cartoons. Winnipeg's bosses formed the Citizens Committee of 1,000 and declared the general strike a conspiracy led by alien scum. When the police sided with the strikers, they were fired and replaced in their entirety by specials used to break the strike. Workers were intransigent, and by the middle of June, the federal government ordered the arrest of strike leaders. When tens of thousands of workers gathered on June 21st for a demonstration at Market Square, they were charged by the Royal Mounted Police armed with clubs and guns. 2 strikers were killed and scores more were injured in what is known as Bloody Saturday. Winnipeg was under military occupation, and the strike ended in heavy losses for the workers. But many strike leaders won regional political elections the following year, defeating the very forces that smashed their strike. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
There's a common political refrain among Texas progressives. Thank God for Mississippi. Our own state government, run by corporate lobbyists and right-wing nutballs, is a notorious hellhole for efforts to provide even a little more fairness for the poor, the working class, and the environment. So, Lone Star progressives need some straw to grasp to keep from tumbling into the ditch of total despair. Mississippi has been that straw. No matter how mingy our state officials are, Texans can count on the Magnolia State to be 1 digit worse. But have mercy, Texans are suddenly in danger of losing our reputational buffer, for Mississippi is close to making a momentous upgrade this election year. An unabashed working-class Democrat with a program of for-the-people reforms and an anti-plutocrat campaign for governor has already pulled even with a right-wing incumbent. Brandon Presley is the upstart's name, a little D Democratic populist elected at 23 years old to be mayor of his small hometown where he still lives. He's now in his 4th term as a highly effective, widely popular member of the State Utility Commission. There, he has successfully battled the electric power giants and telecom profiteers on behalf of everyday ratepayers, workers, and the environment. Presley, who actually is an Elvis cousin, is not a pure liberal. He's pro-gun and anti-choice. But this is Mississippi, and while it's essential to strive for the pure light of liberalism, a multiracial majority of workaday Mississippians see Presley as a pure champion of basics they've long been denied, from health care to voting rights. So they're rallying for change. After all, even a dog knows the difference between being stumbled over and being kicked. This is Jim Hightower saying, the people of Mississippi know they're being kicked by the moneyed powers, and Brandon Presley is saying, let's kick back. To learn more, go to brandonpresley.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, Politico reported today that Democrats are going to be putting the full court press on to get Julie Su not confirmed as Secretary of Labor. And I'm like, how is this so difficult? Democrats, get your head out of the sand. Get Biden's people, his appointees, get them confirmed so they can get to work making working people's lives better. But again, this is another one of those moments. You've got conservative Democrats who, Joe Manchin, Kirsten Sinema, who are going to be the fly in the ointment, here to share some thoughts on how difficult this may be to get Julie Su confirmed and what it would mean if we did. I've asked Jessica Goodhart to come talk with us. She's a senior reporter over at Capital in Maine, capitalinmaine.com, the website. Jessica, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me on, Rick.
So what is the hang up here? This woman is qualified. This is somebody we should want. Every working person should want someone like her as the head of the Department of Labor, someone who knows the job, someone who's been doing it. This seems like just a natural fit. Why is it not happening?
Well, it's interesting, too, because she has actually already been confirmed by the Senate to be Deputy Secretary to Marty Walsh. She's already served with him in that post, and she's actually now acting Secretary of Labor. She's been Secretary of Labor in California. She's been the top labor enforcer in California. Julie Su has been kind of at this work since the 1990s, really. When she first came, she first came to my attention when she was just out of law school, and she was representing Thai seamstresses who were enslaved, actually, at a sweatshop in El Monte, California. And she sued. She did something really interesting and important. She held the retailers and manufacturers liable for violations, and won a big settlement. $4 million was a lot of money at the time, for those garment workers. There are about 72 garment workers. So, I mean, to your question, what's the holdup? I mean, I think it's a list, as you mentioned, a list of senators. Joe Manchin, who's in a close, in a tough, I guess, race in West Virginia. Kirsten Sinema. There's a list that all of those senators have been targeted by active campaigns, by business lobbies.
Business lobbies. So now I think I'm getting the fuller picture. I've already had it, but it's the moneyed interests. The well-heeled, the moneyed interest. Corporate America doesn't want someone who's going to be a champion of working people. So they're putting the monetary pressure on these senators. And because our system is set up on, hey, you got to bring in money. This is it. And this is what frustrates me, Jessica, because things that working people need never get addressed. It's always the interests of the wealthy and the powerful that get their issues and their concerns addressed. But working people like you and me, we're stiffed.
So, when I saw that Julie Su was running into this campaign, I reached out to David Weil. David Weil is probably not a household name. People probably haven't heard of him, but he was head of Wage and Hour division within the Labor Department under President Obama, and he was a nominee for the Wage and Hour division. He was Biden's nominee, and he came up against the same kind of fierce attack last year and was defeated. And so the groups that are now kind of spearheading this attack on Julie Su are the same ones that went after David Weil. And so I gave him a call, and that's sort of what the article that was published in Capital Maine is my conversation with him. And I was like, hey, what's going on? And he said, in some ways, he said, what's going on is that Julie Su was an effective, is effective, and in some ways, this attack on her is to be expected. And in some ways, I think it's a reflection of how closely divided the Senate is. And then I think add to that, you have, she comes from California, where the California, she was labor commissioner.
Right. And wildly popular, as I understand, because of some of the stuff she did around gig work and other stuff.
Well, it's a little more complicated than that. She oversaw the implementation of a state law that granted employment status to gig workers, which was opposed by Uber and Lyft. And it's a bit of a long and winding story, but they put a measure on the ballot that passed in 2019. They put a measure on the ballot, Proposition 22, which was a $200 million effort on their part that passed. The voters, approved that measure. And so, and that often happens in the state now, the referendum process, which was sort of meant as a way for, a sort of a populist check on corporate power, has kind of been flipped in the state and has been sort of
because they can spend the money. You said $220 million?
$200 million.
$200 million. My grandfather would always used to tell me, if a rich guy's going to take a buck out of his pocket to tell you you don't need something, you better spend two to get it, because they understand return on investment. So that $200 million that they spent, they know they're going to make back double, triple, quadruple. They know it's an investment well worth making. And what does that mean? It means working people are going to make less money. There's going to be less in the money of pockets of families to put food on the table and a roof over their heads. So, yeah, welcome to America. Back again.
Yeah. And, it should be said that, Julie, that was a law passed by the legislature. And
Right.
as labor secretary, she was just, charged with enforcing it. And that would be her same role as labor secretary, would be to enforce the laws on the books, which would
Now,
be
I've heard, Jessica, maybe you can help me here, because I've heard that part of the problem that they have is they're afraid that she's going to actually use the tools that the Department of Labor has to advocate for working people, much in the same way that Jennifer Abruzzo over at the NLRB has been doing, saying, look, we're going to be aggressive in our use of what's available to us. We're going to be aggressive in using this department to advance working people. And that, again, the people who spent $200 million to fight back against making gig employees actual workers, they don't want that either.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, what David, Weil said is that, she's currently acting labor secretary. And so, I kind of was curious to know, well, what's the difference between an acting and actually having a labor secretary?
Yeah, she's got a year.
Confirmed. And he says it's really important to have a confirmed labor secretary, and that there's a lot of work to be done, and that having that post empty is a real problem right now. And that, enforcing labor laws has become more difficult as the structure of work has shifted over the years.
And look, it's getting worse, because I don't know if you've been noticing, there are states who have lost their ever-loving freaking minds. I'm looking at Iowa and the child labor bill that they just pushed through. I'm going, I don't know how you put 13, 14-year-olds back on the kill floor of a meat pump. I don't know how you do that. And where you need someone who's going to be at the federal level going, no, we're not doing that. We're not going back 100 years. And I think that's what they're afraid of, is that she will step in and not allow that to happen.
Right. And you have like all these layers right now between, what the sort of lead companies and who are kind of, and the companies that are actually hiring workers. So, in 2014, Weil wrote this book called The Fissured Workplace that talked about that shift towards subcontracting and how it's eroded job quality. And so every time you create a new layer, like a staffing agency or subcontracting, each of those companies has to make some kind of profit margin. And that means that there's less and less for workers, and it can incentivize labor violations of minimum wage or overtime rules sometimes. And it can also make it, to your point about the NLRB, can make it harder to organize.
Absolutely. And that's the reason you see these third-party corporations, coming in, because if you organize them, you just get rid of them and bring somebody else in. So it really puts up a huge barrier for workers to be able to demand better wages, hours, conditions. And again, we know this, which is why that they want to keep pushing the status quo, I believe.
Right. And so I think what a labor department that's really committed to weeding out violations can be really looking at, not just where the violation is occurring, but where, the responsibility lies. And, my interview with Dave Weil, he was, he really attributed the explosion in child labor to this trend. So you have the children as young as 13 and 17 working at slaughterhouses and meatpacking plants now, has come to light in the reporting. And so that's the kind of thing that the Department of Labor really needs to get to work on. And that is sort of some of its urgent business.
Yeah.
And actually, I mean, I will say that when I listened to committee hearing for, for Julie Sue, child labor was something that was raised by Republicans and Democrats. That meaning you can say, I'm not sure, but the Republicans, I should say, all voted against her, but they at least gave lip service to being concerned.
They at least gave lip service because, again, you look at these states that are pushing these repeals and these changes in child labor laws. They're all Republicans, and I wish there were some sane among them. There just don't appear to be any at this moment. And I thought child labor was one of those things where we go, no, that's a nonpartisan issue. We don't want 13-year-olds doing dangerous jobs. I thought that was decided. I thought that was, hey, we're in the 21st century. We don't want 19th century practices for our kids. I really thought that, but here we are. Here we are.
Yeah. Here we are. I know, here we are. And so I think it's easy to have deniability when, you're the, it's a company, it's a subcontractor or a sub that's, doing that hiring. And so it makes the work of the Labor Department trickier. And it makes the leadership piece more important.
You talked about the company, the organizations that were out against her. Do you have an idea of who they are? I guess we could probably the NFIB, the other NRA. I'm sure there are a bunch of these quote unquote small business kind of associations that are massive, that have huge lobbying arms and that kind of stuff, who work against workers and their needs. I'm sure there was a whole alphabet soup of them. No.
Yeah, I mean, I think two of the leading organizations that are worth mentioning are the Flex Association, which represents the gig companies like Uber, Lyft, and then the International Franchise Association. The International Franchise Association includes companies like McDonald's, Burger King, and other, major franchises, and they. Weil told me that, they portray themselves as sort of the face of small business, but that he says that they really represent the large franchisors. And, that's a whole other story because, franchising is a really common business form. And, we see franchises everywhere, right? And there are a lot of, and in fact, Julie Sue's parents, as she pointed out in her testimony, had a pizza franchise and a dry cleaning franchise. The franchisees themselves are often squeezed between the franchisor. They are often small businesses who are often squeezed themselves.
So this is one of those weird things because I have friends out on the West Coast. My Teamster friends out on the West Coast organized a delivery, an Amazon delivery unit, and they're a franchise. They don't actually work for Amazon. They work for a company that is leased through Amazon. And they were saying the same thing, that these franchises are getting squeezed. They're having to break laws and do all kinds of things to make drivers work longer and harder and faster and all this. And the money's not flowing because Amazon is squeezing them. So shouldn't this be a moment where all of the franchisees of the world, all of these people who own the local McDonald's or the local Dairy Queen or the local whatever, rise up and go, you know what? No, the behemoth's been screwing us too. Shouldn't this be a pitchfork moment of unity, don't you think?
I think it's complicated.
So you're going with no. Okay, I went too far.
I think that there has been organizing among franchisees, and there's been some really interesting reporting on that. But it's complicated because they,
it doesn't seem that complicated to me.
I think in the middle.
I want to see her. I want to see Julie Sue as the labor secretary. Any last question I've got for you: what are the chances of her getting confirmed, or do you see this as another acting scenario for a bit until they come up with somebody else?
Yeah, I don't have a crystal ball. I'm sorry, Rick.
No, I figured that someone would have said, hey, it's probably going to happen. It's not going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen, but we will see. Jessica, I appreciate the time. Great work you guys do over at Capital in Maine. I hope folks will check out the website, capitalinmaine.com. We'll get links out on social media how you can check out the work that they do. Jessica Goodhart, I appreciate the time.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Outstanding stuff. Again, capitalinmaine.com. The website. Can take a quick break. Right back with your thoughts. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1917. That was the day of the founding of the Library Employees Union of Greater New York. This was the first public library workers union in the United States. From its beginning, one of the key efforts of the union was the fight for equal rights for women and men in the library field. Maud Malone was one of the leading spokeswomen for the union. She was also an active supporter of the campaign for women to win the right to vote. The union leaders worked to build relationships with other women's rights organizations. According to a report on the first 2 years of the union's activities, the union arose out of the need to remedy the particularly bad working conditions and wages of librarians, especially in the public libraries of the city. The union wanted to improve the promotion system, especially for women. In order to strengthen their cause, the union leaders corresponded with libraries as far away as England, France, Australia, Africa, and South America. These exchanges centered on discussing the library question from the union point of view. Promoting the union point of view to library workers proved to be a tough task. The union tried to convince library employees to think of themselves as workers and part of the working class. The union advocated for library employees to be included as part of the city's civil service system. But many of these workers thought of themselves as professionals. And in the end, this hesitancy to buy into the idea of unionization led to the downfall of the Library Employees Union, which ended its efforts in 1929. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So evidently, it's been a couple of days since Title 42 has gone the wayside. And look, this was supposed to be, the big Fox News right-wing, hate fest. This was supposed to be, Joe Biden did all this. And what's interesting is, this is weird even to me, that evidently fewer people showed up to the border than was expected. But according to the reports, over the past 2 days, U.S. border authorities saw a 50% drop in the number of migrant encounters along the U.S. southern border compared to just a week before. It's weird. I don't get it. Now, the problem hasn't gone away. We still don't have an immigration policy that we're doing anything about. Congress, do your job. Here's the thought. Again, it was all teed up. This was going to be the Fox News. This was going to be glaring headlines. And now it was such a nothing that they had to find something else. So here comes the Durham report. Yes, the Durham report. And here's the weird thing. Depending on where you get your news, this is either, oh my God, it's a smoking gun, we got him, or it's a giant nothing burger. I got an email from someone who said, I'd like to hear what you think. Probably you won't comment. You won't tell the truth to your liberal viewers. What a shame. Just repeat more lies. No, it's either I was watching all the right wing. I don't care what the left has to say on this because I have my own view. So I'm reading all the right-wing blather, the Americans for Limited, Government and Red Watch and this, that, and the other thing watch, and all these right-wing groups sending out their fundraising emails. And it's, oh my God, we got them. The Obama administration did this. The intelligence agencies did this. It was an alphabet soup of attacks on our dear leader. It was 316 pages of crimes by Obama. It was heavy on the Obama. There was Trump was wrongfully targeted. The alphabet agencies came for him. You had Josh Hawley, saying, hey, we need to defund the FBI, break them up. There was all this stuff on the right, all kinds of craziness. And when you look at the actual report, the report makes a lot of allegations. It's an interesting, read. It doesn't have any, and these are the right-wing groups. The right-wing groups, saying, we regret to inform you that, they didn't come up with any reasonable remedies to the abuses. So this report does all this stuff, says, it's like the Mueller report, actually. There was Trump did all this stuff. We have verifiable facts, but we don't have anything that concrete for you to do. Here's where I'm at. You want my opinion? My opinion is no one brought this stuff before a court of law. Durham got nothing. Durham spent a couple of years investigating, got nothing. Because there's nothing there. This is going to be a lot of much ado about nothing. There's going to be a lot of, crying and complaining. Oh my gosh. Look at all these things. But no one going before, and this is where my litmus test for everything is, on any side of the equation. No one is going before the robed people, putting their hand on that book that they say they love so much and swearing to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help them God. Under, this is the important part, under the penalty of perjury. They haven't done that. So until they do this, this is a nothing burger to me. There's nothing to see. It's all it's nicely written. It's talk radio on paper. This is stuff that's going to give the right a ton of stuff to go, look what they did. We got all kinds of stuff. We're going to get them. We're going to get them. It's going to get the right all tizzied up. Going to get them all lathered up in the panties. Oh boy, we're going to get them. Finally going to get them. Got the smoking gun. And they're never going to take it into a court of law. So what is this about? This is about raking money in from you. This is about taking their viewers and using them as little cash machines because they know you're going to be outraged by this. Oh my gosh, it's outrage central. How can you not be outraged? While you're looking at the Miami Herald, who today, I saw an article, it was over the weekend, that the FBI raided a Russian-owned condominium in Florida, Trump Tower number 3. Yeah, I know, nothing to see, move along, nothing to see, but be outraged by a report that nobody read. It's 300 and some pages. It's by a guy who failed to bring any substantive charges and got nothing. But hey, it's gonna make the outraged. It's gonna bring in the eyeballs. It's gonna make money. That's the important part. Appreciate the email and the thought. Gonna take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people.
I don't think there's any doubt that there will be pollutants getting into the water.
Shell refinery fire in Houston finally extinguished, but pollution concerns remain. Biden administration proposes money-saving efficiency standards for dishwashers. Plus,
the Minnesota legislators did not back down from the onslaught of lobbying from corporations whose products are laced with these chemicals.
Minnesota to enact nation's strongest restrictions on PFAS forever chemicals.
All of those restrictions and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
It just occurred to me that liberals want to get rid of mechanical dishwashers and return to the humankind, hence their embrace for cheap illegal labor.
Greg Gutfeld, Fox News. Do you not have anything good to offer to the world? I think the question answers itself. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, Fox News may have nothing good to offer to the world, but you do every day on the Green News Report.
Well, we'll see about that.
Okay.
First, in Greenland, another study concludes that the Greenland ice sheet is melting faster than thought due to warming ocean waters melting it from below. The researchers discovered that daily tides of increasingly warmer water had eroded a 500-foot deep hole at the base of one of Greenland's major glaciers over just the last few years, accelerating its retreat. They say that dynamic mechanism is not factored into models of sea level rise caused by global warming, meaning the extent of future sea level rise could be vastly underestimated.
Meaning they haven't been counting this as part of their calculation.
Yep.
Uh-oh.
In Texas, a major chemical fire that injured 9 workers at a troubled Shell refinery near Houston this week was finally extinguished after 3 days. The company said tests showed no harmful levels of chemicals in the air.
The company said that, did they?
Yep, but it was forced to release toxic wastewater runoff into the Houston Ship Channel.
Oh.
Rice University environmental law professor Jim Blackburn told local news,
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that there will be pollutants getting into the water. I think the question is environmental impact to the ship channel itself, and particularly to Galveston Bay, which is one of the most important fisheries in the United States.
Well, it may be important, but not as important as oil.
Shell's Deer Park refinery unit has a history of malfunctions and unauthorized pollution releases, recording at least 8 incidents over the last 2 years. But state regulators issued no fines because Texas law relieves industrial operators of liability for pollution events as long as they're reported as accidents or emergencies.
Maybe we need to put Texas regulators in quotes.
A new study out this week puts a price on the U.S. oil and gas industry's costs to human health, calculating that pollution from U.S. oil and gas production causes about $77 billion in impacts to public health nationwide every year. And oil and gas production contributes to more than 7,500 excess deaths and nearly 500,000 asthma attacks in the U.S. annually. The biggest impacts are in Texas, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Oklahoma, and Louisiana.
Yeah, but those numbers don't take into account all of the profits that the oil companies actually make, right?
True. Some good news. The Department of Energy has proposed new efficiency rules for dishwashers, the first in more than a decade, that will save Americans money on water and energy bills. Manufacturers would be required to reduce energy consumption by nearly 30%, collectively saving more than $160 million on utility bills every year. The Biden administration also launched a $4 billion effort to electrify U.S. ports to reduce significant air pollution in nearby communities. The Environmental Protection Agency has ordered chemical giant Chemours to stop discharging extremely high levels of toxic PFAS chemicals into a major West Virginia river that provides drinking water for 5 million people.
Oh, I'm sure they'll do that right away.
PFAS chemicals are linked to major illnesses like cancers and autoimmune diseases and are called forever chemicals because they don't break down in the environment. Finally, in Minnesota, state lawmakers are on the verge of passing a major bill with some of the toughest PFAS regulations in the nation.
Good.
The law bans PFAS chemicals for all but the most essential uses. It's named for Amara Strandy, who spent her final months campaigning for the restrictions before she died of a rare liver cancer last month at 21. Here's her father, Michael Strandy.
Through her pain and exhaustion, Amara was willing to be a voice of those who have become the victims of illnesses that are linked to these forever chemicals. Amara called on the lawmakers of Minnesota to do what is right in passing laws that will not only protect our environment and human lives, but also force industries to find alternative ways of manufacturing their products without these deadly chemicals.
Thank you, Amara. Thank you, Minnesota. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, a new Pioneer Institute study says that misleading media reports are responsible for high drug prices that hurt the uninsured and those with high deductible policies. Because as I understand it, the argument is the media lists these prices, which are highly inflated, and then people like me who have really good health insurance, we get to pay a lower negotiated rate, whereas the uninsured and people who have crummy insurance don't. And look, I agree with that. And this is where what's interesting to me is the Pioneer Institute, as I understand, and we're going to find out in a second, is a free market think tank, what I would argue probably a conservative right-wing think tank, but we'll argue about that later. And that's why I've asked William Smith to come talk with us. Bill is a senior fellow there at the free market think tank, the Pioneer Institute in Boston. He's also the author of Drug Pricing 101. Bill, thanks for taking time for us.
My pleasure, Rick. Thanks for having me.
Am I getting this right? The argument is that these drug companies, they list their price kind of like MSRP, and then because certain groups have more power than others to negotiate lower prices, they get them, and the people with less power get screwed. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, there's a lot of payola going on. You remember when the DJs used to get money for every time they played a record? There's a lot of that going on in the drug world where drug companies pay money to health insurance companies to prefer their drugs. And that comes in the form of discounts and rebates and all these fees and all these complicated things. But basically, the big health insurance companies can negotiate very, very cheap prices. Sometimes they'll take 50% off the list, the sticker price for a drug in the negotiations. And the problem is not bad. It's not bad for the health insurance companies. It's not necessarily bad for the drug companies who get their drug preferred by a health plan and make more money. What the people that end up getting screwed are people that are paying cash or in a high deductible health insurance plan. They don't get the negotiated rate. So if a drug is $100 and the health insurance company is only paying $50, when they go into a pharmacy and they're meeting their deductible, they're paying out of their pocket, they have to pay the full $100. They don't get those discounts. And that's really problematic.
But here's the thing: as a free market think tank, shouldn't that be? That's the free market. That's what happens. They've got the power to set the prices. They've said this is what the prices are, and then they've made another agreement to say, well, for you, because you're special, we're going to give you a better deal. Isn't that what you guys kind of advocate for?
I'm not a free market ideologue, and I think that the Pioneer Institute is kind of more a centrist think tank. We couldn't survive as a right-wing think tank in Massachusetts. Let's just put it that way. They'd burn us down. So, we have to be sort of centrist. And I, what I'm critical of is insurance company benefit design. Yeah, they're making people pay a lot more out of their pockets so they can keep premiums low for the healthy people that don't need a cancer drug or don't need a drug for their MS. And I even as a free market person, I'm not in favor of that.
Yeah, see, what I was trying to do here, Bill, is I was trying to put you on the right and me over here somewhere so that we could come together and go, we can agree on something. Because in this country, we can't seem to agree on stuff, Bill. So this seemed like something that was so outrageous, so egregious, that even a right-wing think tank and me, we could agree. And it sounds like you're killing that on me, Bill.
No, I'm not. I'm not killing it on you. I'm agreeing with you. We are finding common ground here. That patients that for unfortunate reasons get cancer and have to they get prescribed a $100,000 cancer drug, and that may be only 0.5% of patients. They shouldn't have to take $5,000 or $10,000 out of their pocket. That's what insurance is for.
Right.
It's in those unlikely, terrible situations where you get a bad diagnosis and you need the insurance to kick in. What's happening more and more is the insurance is kicking in less and less. They're making people pay more and more out of pocket, particularly for expensive drugs for these difficult to treat diseases like arthritis and cancer and multiple sclerosis and cystic fibrosis. You can go down the list,
right,
where people are paying a huge sums out of their pocket.
And Medicare doesn't get to negotiate for all the drugs. There's a couple I know that they're moving towards, but the fact that one of the largest buyers of drugs doesn't get to negotiate is insane to me. So you, as a free market think tank, what is the solution then? Because we agree this is screwed up. There's something seriously wrong. Working people, especially the working poor, are getting screwed over. What do you guys advocate for?
Well, policymakers ought to look at insurance benefit design, and they should try to rein in the out-of-pocket costs that people are being charged. And they're being charged it because the insurance companies report to the employer that's hired them and say, we can keep premiums low if we keep these out-of-pocket costs high. I think that's a problematic policy. I think, a person should have skin in the game and have to pay $100 if they get an expensive drug and the insurance company's paying for it. But $5,000, $7,000, should they be paying that each time they get prescribed an expensive drug? I have a problem with that.
No, I have a problem with it as well. But here's my problem. I look at I don't know if you know who Wendell Potter is. He was a former Cigna VP. In his Substack page, he just reported that the 7 major insurers used $141 billion to buy stocks back over the last several years. You've got between 2012 and 2021, you've got this economics professor from UMass and a researcher from Brown saying that the pharmaceutical companies bought $747 billion in stocks back. We're talking about almost $1 trillion in stock buybacks. Basically, what it's telling me is these industries have no productive use for this money other than to put back into their pockets. So for me, it seems like there's a lot of money to be had there to lower the cost of healthcare and to lower the cost of prescription drugs. We just choose to ensure that the profits that these companies make are sacrosanct, and those of us footing the bill, we're the ones getting screwed.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of unfairness in the U.S. healthcare system. There's no doubt about that. I can agree on that point. But, if you look to other countries that spend less on healthcare and less on prescription drugs even, their people have less access to the best drugs. So, in the U.S., when a new drug is approved, 90% of people get access to it in 3 months. And in places like Canada or Great Britain, when a new drug is approved, people have to wait years before, and sometimes they don't even get access to it at all. And that cuts costs, admittedly, but it also it degrades quality.
Yeah, but
and that's why
these new drugs these new drugs of which you talk, they are outrageously expensive. And again, back to your point, the insurance company is going to pay some of them, but for those who are underinsured or uninsured, they might as well not be getting access to them because they can't afford them.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt there's some sticker shock coming in prescription drugs. But what's happening, Rick, is that the science is changing, and we're understanding a lot more about genetics. And so they're creating more and more drugs for specific small populations. So lung cancer is not lung cancer. Everybody used to get just chemo and radiation for lung cancer. Right. Now there are about 5 different types of lung cancer, and they know what types based on their genes, people's genes, and they know what therapies work with that particular person. So when you have a smaller number of customers, the drugs are always going to be more expensive than if you make a pill for 10 billion people with high blood pressure. And so what's happening is there are more and more of these special drugs for rare diseases coming online, and their sticker prices are higher. Now, I'm not going to cry for insurance companies because they save a lot of money when patents expire on drugs and the drugs go generic and the price drops 95%. And over the last 5 years, we've had $82 billion in savings that have come just from patent expirations. So those patent expirations are helping make room for these insurance companies to pay for the more expensive niche rare disease drugs. But there's no doubt it's a problem if you don't have insurance, because if you get a certain type of lung cancer and your drug is going to be $250,000 and you don't have insurance, you're in trouble.
So some of my friends on the left would say this is why we need, standardized medicine, health insurance for everyone, a Medicare for all kind of scenario, or at least to strengthen the ACA so that everyone has a baseline of insurance so that they're not exposed to this kind of risk. And look, I'm of the mindset that insurance seems pretty simple. One giant pool makes a lot of sense to me because you mitigate risk across a larger pool. I know free market ideology probably going to be against this, but what are your thoughts?
Well, again, I don't morally condemn people who take that position, because I think there is a lot of unfairness in the U.S. healthcare system that comes out in many stories that we hear. On the other hand, I do study for a living some of the nationalized healthcare systems in Great Britain and in Europe, and they're brutal about limiting people's access to high technology treatments, high technology surgeries, high technology drugs. If you get sick in Great Britain or Canada, my advice is to come to the U.S. because you're going to get better quality treatment in the U.S. So it's a trade-off.
If you can afford it. If you can afford it. And look, I'm not talking about government-run hospitals and government-hired doctors, and not like we have for our military veterans. I would never for the mass of the public have a TRICARE system for everybody, but just an insurance pool. It seems like a lot of efficiencies could be done by having one simple form, one insurance company, and I don't care if it's public or private. It just seems like having all of these different ones who the profit motives seem to be more important than the competition, because it doesn't seem like we're doing the competition thing, Bill. I'm missing the competition.
There's no doubt there's merit in your argument, because a bigger pool like that gets rid of the adverse selection problem, right? Insurance companies want to get sick people out of their plans, and they actually figure out tactics to make sure they don't enroll sick people. And that's problematic, because the sick people are the ones that need the insurance, right? But if you have a big pool where everybody has to be in it, that solves that problem. But it creates other problems also. And as I said, the biggest problem is the government ends up rationing to control costs, because everyone's going to want to use this insurance aggressively to control costs. They limit access to different therapies.
But aren't we already doing that? Isn't this what we're talking about right now? Isn't this rationing? The fact that I can't afford it. I don't have the money, Bill. I'm underinsured. I can't afford the $5,000 deductible. I can't afford the medicine. Aren't we rationing just on who can afford it and who can't?
We are. But on the other hand, most Americans get access to the best drugs and the best surgeries. And if you go down the rationing path, you're going to be in a situation where that's not going to be the case.
So walk me through what we should be doing. Give me an action right now that you and I can agree on, that our listeners can go, hey, tomorrow, this is what we're going to push, because it's patently unfair what's happening to our neighbors and our friends. How do we fix this? How do we right this wrong, Bill?
So state officials that regulate health insurance plans should be looking at out-of-pocket costs, and they should be saying pocket costs over a certain amount or over a certain percentage, maybe even based on income. I don't know. I haven't thought it through this carefully. I'm not an insurance guy, but they have to limit the amount of, like, the federal government limits the amount of out-of-pocket costs for high deductible plans to $7,000.
Yeah, now, but who's got $7,000, Bill?
I know I think it should be lower than that. But you'd have to carefully look at how much it's going to cost in premiums, but I think there's a reasonable way to change insurance benefit design through policy that would make it easier for people to afford their drugs or surgeries, or God forbid they get sick.
And in this day and age, God forbid you get sick is exactly right, Bill. I've got the best health insurance money can buy. My union negotiates the best benefits I can get. I pay through the nose for it, about $20,000 a year. But I get all this stuff, and I'm very fortunate. I want that for everyone, Bill. I want to make sure that everyone has the ability in the moment that they have tragedy hit, that they get sick, that something bad happens, that the last thing they're thinking about is, can I afford this? And they're concentrating on how to get better. That to me is that's the North Star for me.
No, we don't disagree on that. I think people should have good insurance. That's the purpose of insurance. And people increasingly have crappy insurance. That's a problem. And it used to be that commercial companies would have some of the best insurance because they wanted to, it's a benefit. It's like the salaries they're paying their employees. They wanted to have good drug formularies that would cover most of the drugs. They want to have low copays and low out-of-pocket costs. I tell you, for whatever reason, that's changing.
Yeah.
And
well, it's greed. I mean, almost $1 trillion in stock buybacks, Bill. Come on. This is the ticket. I'm just a dumb truck driver, and I've looked at this and gone, outrageous, obscene kinds of money, because we were told, give them all these tax breaks, do all this stuff so that they can use this money to get us better drugs. And yet they're saying, hey, we got $1 trillion that we don't know what to do with. So let's just buy our stocks back. That's how I read it. So we agree that better insurance is something everyone should have. So how do we get to that point? How do we ensure that? Do we do that through government policy? We do that through the goodness of corporations' heart? Will there be a benevolent insurance company that says, we bestow this on you? Where do you see this? I'm as a union guy, I'm like, hey, unions should be fighting for better health care, because every union guy I know has got good health care. What should we be doing?
Well, you can certainly do it through legislation and through hard policy and impose it on people. But there are other things that you can be doing. I know that there are a patient advocacy group that I know that kind of give out a list of rewards to companies that provide the lowest out-of-pocket costs to their employees, and they reward them, and it's like they get the good housekeeping seal of approval. And I think we should be stigmatizing companies that are not doing the right thing via their employees. But I'd be willing to consider even legislation and other hard policy changes.
Wow, that's got to be hard for you. I'm sorry, but everyone that I know who's in a free market think tank, they all say the same thing. Government no, government bad. Let the market decide. I was expecting a much different response.
No, well, I'm not loved by the insurance companies, that's for sure. But I think people getting good health care is more important than being loved by the insurance companies. And I've seen it too many times where people, there's a great breakthrough medicine that happens for some kind of rare cancer, and people can't afford it. And they have insurance, and they should be able to afford it if they have insurance.
No, especially since our tax dollars we spend a lot of tax money on subsidizing the development of these drugs. Our university system spends a lot of time and effort and opportunity doing this stuff. The benefit should trickle down, shouldn't it?
Yeah, but I'll tell you, one of the worst offenders is Medicare. People in Medicare Part D, where they get their drugs through the Medicare program, pay the highest out-of-pocket costs.
Bad legislation. Bad, horrible legislation.
Yeah. So, there are things that can be done. The good news, Rick, is that this is a small percentage of the population. Like 1% to 2% of the population find themselves in a situation where they're prescribed a really expensive drug because they have a really serious condition. And, that's when it's only 1% to 2%, it's a solvable problem, right?
And I must know a lot of people who drug prices are killing them, because I know a lot of people who they're struggling at the end of every month. So we've got a lot of work to do. But Bill, I appreciate the conversation. Good stuff. I hope folks will take a look at the book, Drug Pricing 101, written by William Smith, and check out the Pioneer Institute for your latest free market stuff. Bill, thanks so much. I appreciate the time.
You bet, Rick. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much. Want to hear your thoughts. How does this work for you? Are you in the world of the drug prices are killing me? I want to hear it. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show for working people.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Oh, boy. Rudy. That's all I can say. Rudy. What? Rudy. What? Rudy. I don't know if you saw the story. Evidently, Rudy's getting sued. Rudy Giuliani, Trump's attorney, former attorney. I guess Trump fired him. Evidently, this lawsuit that has been filed, 70-page suit, filed by the person who was his former director of business development. I don't know what that means. Is accusing him of rape, sexual harassment, abuse of power, wage theft, and other misconduct while she served as his underling. And he was Trump's personal lawyer. Evidently, the story goes like this. Giuliani hired her for the whopping salary of $1 million a year plus expenses, and then only paid her $12,000 over 2 years. That is literally the most Trumpian thing that I've heard all day. But even more than this, forced. I don't know if I can say this on air, but evidently Rudy wanted to feel like Bill Clinton. That's a direct quote. So, let your mind go where that goes. He wanted her. He demanded that she either was naked while she was at work, wears a bikini, or flag short shorts. Flag short shorts. She also, talks about how in this 70 pages, how he would regularly spout off confused and hostile alcohol-laced tirades, usually homophobic and racist. Surprise, surprise. And here's the thing. This is the part that's really, she says she has tapes. Yep. The lawsuit states he made clear that satisfying his sexual demands, which came virtually anytime, anywhere, was an absolute requirement of her employment and his legal representation. Giuliani began requiring Miss Blank to work at his home or out of a hotel room so that she would be at his beck and call. He drank morning, noon, and night and was frequently intoxicated, and therefore his behavior was always unpredictable. Evidently, Rudy, who's supposed to be a good lawyer, is going to represent himself. Now, understand, this woman has something like 23,000 emails and tapes. Did I mention she's got tapes? Evidently, there are tapes of him talking badly about other political figures, lots of sexual comments. Margaret Thatcher, I want to hear those. What possibly could he be talking about sexually about Margaret Thatcher? But evidently, according to her, he constantly took Viagra and demanded that she take care of his, Viagra. Here's the kicker. This is the most conservative part yet. He thought of her as his daughter. Let that sink in as he was pushing bondage and sadomasochism. Yeah, it's his daughter. Quick break, please. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1917. That was the day of the founding of the Library Employees Union of Greater New York. This was the first public library workers union in the United States. From its beginning, one of the key efforts of the union was the fight for equal rights for women and men in the library field. Maud Malone was one of the leading spokeswomen for the union. She was also an active supporter of the campaign for women to win the right to vote. The union leaders worked to build relationships with other women's rights organizations. According to a report on the first 2 years of the union's activities, the union arose out of the need to remedy the particularly bad working conditions and wages of librarians, especially in the public libraries of the city. The union wanted to improve the promotion system, especially for women. In order to strengthen their cause, the union leaders corresponded with libraries as far away as England, France, Australia, Africa, and South America. These exchanges centered on discussing the library question from the union point of view. Promoting the union point of view to library workers proved to be a tough task. The union tried to convince library employees to think of themselves as workers and part of the working class. The union advocated for library employees to be included as part of the city's civil service system. But many of these workers thought of themselves as professionals. And in the end, this hesitancy to buy into the idea of unionization led to the downfall of the Library Employees Union, which ended its efforts in 1929. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
There's a common political refrain among Texas progressives. Thank God for Mississippi. Our own state government, run by corporate lobbyists and right-wing nutballs, is a notorious hellhole for efforts to provide even a little more fairness for the poor, the working class, and the environment. So, Lone Star progressives need some straw to grasp to keep from tumbling into the ditch of total despair. Mississippi has been that straw. No matter how mingy our state officials are, Texans can count on the Magnolia State to be one digit worse. But have mercy! Texans are suddenly in danger of losing our reputational buffer, for Mississippi is close to making a momentous upgrade this election year. An unabashed working-class Democrat with a program of for-the-people reforms and an anti-plutocrat campaign for governor has already pulled even with a right-wing incumbent. Brandon Presley is the upstart's name, a little D Democratic populist elected at 23 years old to be mayor of his small hometown where he still lives. He's now in his 4th term as a highly effective, widely popular member of the State Utility Commission. There, he has successfully battled the electric power giants and telecom profiteers on behalf of everyday ratepayers, workers, and the environment. Presley, who actually is an Elvis cousin, is not a pure liberal. He's pro-gun and anti-choice. But this is Mississippi, and while it's essential to strive for the pure light of liberalism, a multiracial majority of workaday Mississippians see Presley as a pure champion of basics they've long been denied, from health care to voting rights. So they're rallying for change. After all, even a dog knows the difference between being stumbled over and being kicked. This is Jim Hightower saying, the people of Mississippi know they're being kicked by the moneyed powers. And Brandon Presley is saying, let's kick back. To learn more, go to brandonpresley.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Well, the CNN experiment failed badly. They put Trump on. They had 3.3 million viewers for his town hall of hilarity. And look, it was fun to watch. I got to be honest. I like watching Trump be Trump. I just don't want him to be president. But evidently, from that 3.3 million peak of the Trump stuff, they have now fallen to fourth among cable news behind the mega channel Newsmax, who evidently is getting less than 100,000 views nightly. That ain't good for CNN. They thought they're going to roll the dice, go a little right wing. It doesn't seem to be working. Does not seem to be working. Anyway, lots of fun and entertainment today, and that's why I've asked my good friend Bob Ney, former Ohio congressman and political analyst, to come share some thoughts. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks, Rick. Now, what did Tom Cruise say in the movie Show Me the Money, right? They made some money off the ads,
They did.
Okay.
Long term, long game, though. Long game. Not going to be good. Not going to be good for them.
Okay, but let's throw this out here. And don't go Biden or Harris for a second. Okay, they had Trump on. Who's somebody else they could put on to generate controversy? Who else?
Oh, you're going to go after Green. You're going to go after some of the other.
Oh, you could have Green on. Wow.
I don't think any of the other people are going to generate that kind of.
No, they aren't. I just was because maybe now they go RFK. How about that, RFK Jr.?
Yeah, but he's not going to draw people.
Nothing. I'm just saying, if you're CNN's board, you got to be throwing the next name out there.
And there isn't one. I mean, that's the thing. Trump is entertaining. I mean, to be honest, set the politics aside. He was a giant a-hole to that woman. And people like to see that. They saw the Apprentice guy on there doing what he does. You're fired, you're nasty, all of that stuff. And that some people find that interesting and entertaining. It's funny to watch. I don't want that guy as president.
Did you see that article? I don't know. I'm sure you did. About his staff. I put it in my news notes on purpose, and I used the example of the Shah of Iran. I don't know if you saw that.
I did.
His staff was back there going, look at this poll. Okay, come on now. Come on. Look in the mirror. Hey, they were literally doing, well, not the look in the mirror part, but they were, here's your polls. Remember this. And they were doing that.
Yeah, you got to stoke his ego, man. Because someone was asking me today who I thought his VP choice was going to be. Is it going to be Carrie Lake? And I'm like, no. I don't think there's any way he takes Carrie Lake because she's going to take shine from him. He's going to go for someone like Pence, who is definitely not going to infringe on his star. They're going to take. There's going to be nobody going to see the VP. Trump wants to be the center of attention. I don't think he pulls somebody who could possibly take anything from him.
Yeah. Well, and they didn't hang Pence, so he could still take him.
He's not going to take Pence. That ain't going to happen.
What could be the slogan? You didn't hang him, so I want him. Something like that.
There you go. Maybe that's it.
We could do some scripts for this. I'm telling, and sell them to TV.
Without question, we should work on this. I got to get your thoughts on this Giuliani thing, though. Did you see that Giuliani's being sued?
Right.
The part of the thing that catches my attention is, all of the gross stuff aside, we all saw the Sacha Baron Cohen movie, Rudy happily laying on the bed, taking his pants off.
Right.
But, as as this story is coming out, they're talking about all of the just really outrageous, over the top kind of things he's doing. But then the punchline being, he thought of this woman as his daughter, which was really freaking creepy to me. Right.
And she's suing him for the sexual assault, and then they had it was $10 million, wasn't it?
Yeah, she wants back wages and all kinds of stuff.
No dump fee, and any of these suits, any of them, when they first come out, I always have a bit of skepticism. I thought. They jumped on the Minnesota senator too fast. He wanted to be investigated at the time, Al Franken, right? Yep. And I thought that was not fair. But on Giuliani's case, after I watched that Sacha Baron thing,
yep.
You don't go in a hotel and then lay on the bed and you're tucking your shirt in. You don't do it. I mean, You don't.
Yeah,
He did.
no. See, here's the thing. My general rule of thumb is I'll believe it when you put it in writing in front of a judge.
Yeah.
When you're standing in front of that person with a robe on, putting your hand on that book, saying, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. So help me God, and under the threat of punishment for perjury. Then I'll take more of that. So this, I don't think this is the end of the world, smoking gun stuff, but I do find it interesting.
Well, he's to the end of his career. She said that he promised to pay her $1 million a year and represent her for free, legal services when she needed something about, I don't know, domestic abuse or something of that nature. And if this were one of those cases that you're innocent, but you want to get rid of it, and so you'll pay $75,000. I mean, this happens.
Yeah.
But you're committing to $1 million a year? No, you definitely did something. But Giuliani, I'll tell you, when he went down, he was America's mayor.
Well, evidently that was her.
Yeah,
because he wanted to feel like Bill Clinton.
Well, that's true. That's true. So his defense is going to be what is, or he'll mess it up. He'll say something else. What is was, but he represented the Mujahideen cult when he set up lobbying, and John Bolton was doing work for them, and they were on at that time, they aren't now, they were on the official terrorist list. That day was the first time in my mind years back I thought, this guy is, it's money.
Yep.
You don't come out of New York City and represent somebody on the official terrorist list at the time. Again, they aren't now. So I don't know. He just has been going downhill a long time, and how he won't get some type of penalty in Georgia will be beyond me.
Yeah, well, I'm still waiting for that to come out, especially with the fake electors and all that. But I also got to get your thought of the big news story of the day. It was supposed to be the migrants at the border, but that petered out. Now it's the Durham report. Everybody, all the right-wing outlets are losing their mind over this 316-page Durham report. That evidently this is the smoking gun, Bob. A smoking gun. It's all there. It's all there except any actual things.
Right. The special prosecutor, of course, found that the FBI rushed into its investigation between Trump and Russia ties, 2016. And now this part is the one that got me, where his report said they relied too much on raw and unconfirmed intelligence. Okay. They came after me for getting a boat from the Shah of Iran's daughter, who was dead in Paris of a drug overdose.
Right.
So do I believe the Justice Department can act on raw and unconfirmed knowledge? You bet.
Yeah.
I personally do. But so that part, that's the government. And so, yes, that happens. But the conclusion falls short, because there's no recommendations in there for charges.
No, I mean, that's the thing that gets me. You went through all this, we spent all this money, and nothing. I mean, it's kind of I kind of likened it to the Mueller report. There are all these things. There are all these things that Trump did. We know 112 connections between his campaign and the Russians, but there was no there. There was no take it to the judge. There was no hey, we should file something. Nothing. Now, I find it interesting that, depending on where you get your news, this is either the smoking gun that's going to bring Obama down and Biden, of course, with him, or, on the left, it's a giant nothing burger because there's nothing here. Now, I'm somewhere a little bit closer to the, a little bit middle, because they do talk about FISA and some of the abuses that, I was concerned about when we were using it against the people, wearing the turbans. But it wasn't popular then to talk about that. I do think there's some problems with that.
Oh, I think there are. Of course, I just kind of love this. They do this probe. I want the big probe. I want bring me the 6 people that lied to us probe.
That's what Rudy
for Iraq.
wanted.
I want that one,
I shouldn't have. That was a cheap shot. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have jumped into that. No,
well,
I mean,
Rudy is definitely subject for these shots. Now, the problem with Rudy, he's not going to remember half of what any of us say. So.
He'll slur something later. No, but so do you see this? Is this going to go anywhere? This Durham report? Does this matter? I mean, outside of right-wing talk radio, who's going to bloviate on this for the next couple of days and rile people up? This is going nowhere. I mean, Josh Hawley said that we need to break up the FBI, which, I don't want to defend the FBI because I remember them, putting people at bake sales when we were, when they were anti-war folks. I mean, the FBI does some things that I'm not thrilled with either, but, break them up. I don't know. I'm kind of not with him.
I mean, look, if internal investigations are done by the government, Department of Justice, et cetera, they usually absolutely end up nowhere because it's the fox in the hen house. And there was a horrible case in Cleveland where they set up these poor people. They photoshopped pictures. These people went to prison. One of them was in prison with me. In fact, I saw the night when the emergency call came from D.C. to tell him, let him grab his stuff. His family's coming from Cleveland to get him. To put him out within an hour out of the prison. And they went after a DEA agent, but it took actually a lawyer friend of mine, and they, everybody got together and went after that DEA. But it practically took an act of the Lord to get that agent, right? Because it's internal. Now, when you take something like Durham and you have outside reports of agencies, that's when heads fly, normally. And heads didn't fly.
Yeah, nothing.
So trust me, if there was something there that was chargeable, Durham would go to town on it. So this will come and go. It just shows that, they act on raw information. They do this, they do that. I mean, we kind of all knew that anyway.
Yeah, but here again, I come back to my depending on where you get your news, this is the weird part of this. There's nowhere saying just what you said. I mean, because I agree with you. It's either, oh my God, hair on fire. It's it's the greatest thing. We're going to get them, or it's people ignoring it.
Well, plus the time is, look, everybody's kind of over Russia, kind of over stolen elections for the most part. I know there's people who still care, but people are over a lot, and so what's going to take precedence? A lot of local issues. We're going to tumble the stock market down below the pavement, with the default, with inflation, what are gas prices going to be, things like that. But in a way, if the right keeps pursuing this, and maybe for the Democratic side, they should hope that they run ads on this, then it takes away other issues that they could actually attack on.
Yeah, good point. And Janet Yellen evidently is saying that June 1st is the drop dead date. That's the date, and she's not backing off of it.
Right. It's very interesting. I've been kind of watching this. She's basically letting the president's becoming the negotiator, which is interesting. And the reason I say that, usually in those positions like Yellen has, they'll kind of try to do a double play here where her negotiators meet with Senate and House negotiators, but it's been the president, so that allows her basically to kind of focus strictly on what to do, not what to negotiate, if that makes sense. Because she's going to be the what-to-do person around, whether it's June 1st or it takes 4 more days or whatever it takes, she's going to be the what-to-do person.
Yeah, or maybe she just said, hey, I don't want any part of that. It's not my job to negotiate. It's my job to do. Who knows?
To do.
Who knows where this goes? I want to get your thoughts on, you said a moment ago that people are over stolen elections. I don't know if you saw Trump on CNN. Definitely not over. I saw this story over at Bloomberg, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it because you were on the record and very clear he's not going to be the nominee, not going to go to the convention. But evidently, according to Bloomberg, rule changes that were made during the Trump years and by Trump and his camp evidently are going to make it easier for him to win the nomination because evidently it's a winner-take-all scenario, as where before it wasn't on state delegates. Is that? Do you know what they're talking about?
Yes, because eventually, in the process, and this is what makes him have an easier path to the nomination, because it used to be when I went to Kansas City, for example, in 1976, I was directly picked by the governor himself for me to go. And I was an at-large delegate. And so what happens is you have X amount of at-large delegates, and then you have maybe 4 or 5 delegates that were for Reagan, let's say, all right? So at the final roll call, some of those delegates could yield and turn to Reagan, but they could remain with Reagan and in the counts there. On this one, they have a state take-all rule where, if you get, for example, a state, let's say you had 35 delegates and somebody else or the rest of them have, 33 or whatever. Well, then that state converts to a total of 60-some delegates for Donald Trump. Even though if you let the process play out, it might have a different effect. So it made him an easier path for the nomination. Doesn't mean an easier path for a win, but in the general. But
no. And Sununu, said that. Did you see Sununu's interview with Jen Psaki?
No.
Where he came out and said, "Look, Trump's a loser. Trump's a loser. He lost here. He lost here. He lost the Congress. He lost this. He's a loser. He's not going to win in the general election. He may win the primary. He's not going to win in the general. He's a loser." And I was like, wow, someone's finally saying it. Sununu's not going to win, but
right.
I'm more afraid of him, honestly, than I am of Trump, because I think there's a whole bunch of other scenarios. But I thought it was interesting that some of the attacks are bleeding in.
Right. And so, yeah, even if, look, Trump took over the party, he wrote these delegate rules just in case, the number one winner on these rules, they take it all. So if people are trying to keep Trump, like Sununu, out of the process, if he gets into the convention, then it's wired for him. I've always said this, as you know, since last February, that he won't be in the convention.
Right.
Now, I've also been asked, what do you mean? I said, if he's in the convention, he's the nominee.
Right.
Let me make that crystal clear. I'm not nuts. He goes in that convention, he is the nominee. I just don't think at the end, I've got one of these guts. It's just something's going to happen, and he's not going to make it into it.
Well, I'm hoping.
But if he gets in, it's done.
There's part of me that hopes you're right, but I think in order for the country to heal, he has to be soundly defeated at the polls to end the whole thing. There's a part of me that wants him to stand for election, and the hope is that he's soundly defeated. My problem with that is he could win.
Well, a couple of things, and actually I quoted you to a friend the other day. A friend of mine, I said, you ought to listen to Rick's show. He's a Democratic friend. He's like, it's so done, Bob. Oh my goodness, it's not even going to be close. I said, you don't believe me? Why don't you listen to Rick Smith? Because he could win. Biden could win. He could win. And anybody who thinks that he can't, he could. So it's going to be an interesting scenario. I'm taking it basically kind of from the point of view that his ego, deep down when nobody's around, nobody's watching him, nobody's listening to him, he's got to be sitting there going, I could lose this thing. Now, you can claim fraud twice. You and I know the next election is going to be so watched, scrutinized, and everything else under the sun.
Yeah.
So I'm arguing the ego is going to kick in. He doesn't want the potential. If in his gut he feels he's not going to make it, you don't use it was stolen the second time in history.
Yeah. Finally, I want to get your thoughts on the dumbest guy in the Senate, Tommy Tuberville. Evidently, I shouldn't say that.
Is he the dumbest for sure?
I gotta think he's the dumbest, or at least I hope. Evidently, he's angry at the Pentagon for forcing troops to read liberal books, for providing abortion, and for driving out white nationalists. He's very angry about this, Bob.
Wow.
Or at least that's what he was quoted as saying.
Wow. Is he married to, he's not married to Marjorie Three Names, is he? Okay. I didn't. I couldn't. I didn't know what my history was there.
I'm telling you, you can't make this stuff up.
Wow. You can take the abortion issue and say they're trying to force abortion thoughts on it. Okay, and yeah, all right. You can listen to that, and people think something. The book thing, it's just a little bit too much burn the book, all right? But you can use one example of a book everybody hates or something. The white nationalist thing, that's a non-starter. That's just, if you're in the United States Congress, it is a non-starter.
Well, he is the senator from Alabama.
Wow.
Yeah, well, there you go.
It's more bizarre every day.
It does. You can't, as you've said to me a million times, you couldn't write this script and take it to anyone to produce. No one.
We would be laughed out of every office in Hollywood had we went 4 or 5 years ago and said, look, here's our scenario, starting with Trump coming down the steps. Okay, you two clowns, go back to Pennsylvania and Ohio.
Yeah, go do something.
Right.
Crazy stuff. But Bob, I appreciate the time as always. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Our good friend Bob Ney, former Ohio Congressman, political analyst. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Look, I know a lot of my friends on the left say, no, he can't win. I wish I was so certain. Back after this. Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute. Back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Quick couple of things to wrap things up today. Evidently, Elon Musk has been subpoenaed in the U.S. Virgin Islands seeking documents that the government there is suing. The U.S. Virgin Islands, evidently they're suing J.P. Morgan Chase over sex trafficking because of Jeffrey Epstein, a longtime J.P. Morgan Chase customer. Evidently, they're claiming some of the funding went through. This is a novel way to go after these big banksters for this. And I'm going, Elon, I don't know that Elon's name has been tagged to the Epstein Island. I gotta wonder what the Twitter maniacs are going to think about that. Yeah, interesting times. And also, well, thank you, Texas. Evidently, a guy in Texas didn't want his girlfriend to get an abortion, so he killed her, shot her in the head. So he evidently, he did the abortion. Evidently, now here's the weird part of this. They've got it on tape. Evidently, she shrugs him off and hey, I'm doing what I'm doing best for me. They walked a little bit and he just pulled out a gun and shot her in the head. She hits the ground, he shoots her more, and then he runs away. Now my mind, and this is how screwed up we are. It's on tape. It's right there. My mind goes to this place. It's Texas. Gun fetish, abortion fetish. Does he get off? I know, not the other thing. But does he get away with this? Justifiable homicide. He was protecting a life. I mean, I don't know. It's Texas. How crazy could this be? Now, evidently, at the time of the shooting, this guy was charged with assault of a family member. Evidently, he choked this woman. So violence against women, not something that should be shocking. And I know my liberal friends are going to go, see, this is why you shouldn't have had a gun. And I got to be honest, I can't argue with that. It's one of those things. You beat up a woman. I don't know. I know it's my right. Crazy times we live in, folks. Crazy Crazy times. Want to hear your thoughts. If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you download the podcast. Wherever you find your favorite podcast, you'll find ours. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If I said something that got under your skin, made you think, made you angry, if the outrage is amongst you, well, let me know about it. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.